I'll never forget the sound of my own screams echoing through the empty streets as I stumbled away from the ruins of my life. The words, "I'm sorry," still ringing in my ears like a cruel joke. It's funny how your whole world can come crashing down in an instant, leaving you with nothing but shattered dreams and a deep-seated anger that threatens to consume you whole. But to understand how I ended up there, you need to know how it all started. My life was pretty routine before everything fell apart. I woke up every morning at 6 a.m., got dressed, and headed to the small cafe where I worked as a barista. I loved my job, I loved the smell of freshly brewed coffee, and I loved the regulars who came in every day. They were like family to me, always asking about my day and sharing stories about their own lives. I had a small apartment above the cafe, which was convenient and affordable. My best friend Rachel lived just a block away, and we would often meet up for dinner or go for walks in the park. I had a simple life, but it was mine, and I was content. I had a boyfriend, Alex, who was a few years older than me, and we had been together for about 3 years. He was kind, supportive, and loved me for who I was. Or so I thought. It was a typical Wednesday evening when my world started to unravel. Alex and I were at home, cooking dinner together, when Rachel dropped by unexpectedly. She seemed nervous and fidgety, glancing at Alex with a mixture of fear and anger in her eyes. "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked, pulling me into the living room. "What's going on?" I asked, sensing that something was off. "It's about Alex," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I saw him with someone else last night. They were laughing and holding hands, and it looked pretty serious." My heart sank, and I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "What are you talking about?" I asked, trying to process what I was being told. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. But I thought you had a right to know," Rachel said, tears welling up in her eyes. I turned to Alex, who was standing in the doorway, a guilty look on his face. "Is this true?" I asked, my voice shaking with rage and sadness. "I can explain," he started, but I cut him off. "Just tell me the truth," I demanded, my eyes blazing with anger. "Yes, it's true," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, I never meant to hurt you." As I delved deeper into the world of corporate finance, I began to notice a peculiar trend. It seemed that the company's CEO, Reginald Thornton, had a fascination with exploiting loopholes in the system to further his own interests. He would often boast about his ability to navigate the complex web of regulations and emerge unscathed, with a sly smile that made my blood boil. But what caught my attention was the fact that he had a weakness for a particular type of investment, one that could potentially be used against him. I spent countless hours poring over financial reports, searching for any hint of vulnerability in Thornton's empire. And then, it hit me. A small, almost imperceptible discrepancy in the company's accounting practices. It was a tiny thread, but one that I knew could be pulled to unravel the entire fabric of Thornton's operation. I had discovered a loophole, one that could be used to exact my revenge. The plan was to create a series of shell companies, each one designed to take advantage of the loophole in a different way. I would use these companies to slowly drain the resources from Thornton's empire, bleeding him dry without him even realizing it. It was a delicate operation, one that required precision and patience. But I was determined to see it through, to make Thornton pay for what he had done to me. I started by setting up the first shell company, a small investment firm that would serve as the foundation for my plan. I carefully crafted the company's financial reports, making sure to take advantage of the loophole in a way that would be subtle but effective. And then, I began to make my move, slowly but surely. I started by making a series of small investments, each one designed to test the waters and see how Thornton's company would react. The investments were careful and calculated, designed to fly under the radar while still taking advantage of the loophole. And as the weeks went by, I watched with satisfaction as Thornton's company began to hemorrhage money, slowly but surely. But I wasn't content to simply sit back and watch. I wanted to make sure that Thornton knew what was happening, that he felt the pain of his own downfall. So, I started to make my presence known, to leave a trail of breadcrumbs that would lead him to me. I made a series of small, taunting investments, each one designed to rub salt in the wound. And then, I waited. I waited for Thornton to realize what was happening, to understand that he was being slowly and deliberately destroyed. I waited for the fear to set in, for the panic to take hold. And as the days turned into weeks, I could feel the tension building, the sense of unease that was growing inside Thornton's empire. It was a slow burn, a cold and calculated revenge, but it was one that I was determined to see through, to make sure that Thornton paid for what he had done to me. I was the ghost in the machine, the silent assassin who was taking him down from the inside. And as the weeks turned into months, I could feel the satisfaction growing, the sense of justice that was being served. Thornton was starting to feel the heat, to realize that something was terribly wrong. He was making mistakes, small at first but growing larger with each passing day. And I was there, watching and waiting as he stumbled and fell. It was a beautiful thing, a slow-motion train wreck that I had orchestrated with precision and care. And as the final act began to play out, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and satisfaction. I had taken down a powerful enemy, one who had wronged me in the worst possible way. I had used his own weaknesses against him, had exploited the loopholes in the system to exact my revenge. It was a cold and calculated revenge, one that would leave Thornton ruined and broken, but it was one that I knew was justified, one that would bring me the closure I so desperately needed. I'm glad to finally reach the conclusion of my story. As I mentioned earlier, my boss, Mr. Johnson, had been making my life at the office a living hell. His constant belittling, unrealistic expectations, and blatant favoritism had taken a toll on my mental health. But I had reached my breaking point, and it was time for him to face the consequences. The company's HR department finally took action after I presented them with irrefutable evidence of Mr. Johnson's misconduct. They launched a thorough investigation, which revealed a long history of complaints against him from various employees. The evidence was damning, and the company was forced to take drastic measures. Mr. Johnson was fired, effective immediately. The news spread like wildfire through the office, and my colleagues were ecstatic. They had all been suffering in silence, afraid to speak out against him, but now they were finally free from his tyranny. As for me, I was hailed as a hero. My bravery in standing up to Mr. Johnson had inspired others to come forward and share their own stories of abuse. The company apologized for not taking action sooner and offered me a significant promotion, which I gladly accepted. It's been a year since the incident, and I'm thrilled to report that the office is now a much happier and more productive place. The new management has created a positive and inclusive work environment where everyone feels valued and respected. I'm now in a leadership position, and I make sure to use my experience to help others who may be going through similar struggles. I've also started a support group for employees who have been victims of workplace bullying, and it's been incredibly rewarding to see people heal and thrive. As I look back on the ordeal, I feel a sense of triumph and satisfaction. I stood up for myself and others, and it paid off. I'm proud of the person I've become and the impact I've made. I'm now living my best life, and I owe it all to my courage and determination. I hope my story can inspire others to stand up for themselves and never give up in the face of adversity. TLDR